Hey, I'm going to be talking about something really interesting to me anyway, called, it's an ancient poetic structure called chiasmus. I'm going to be a little bit boring and cheat and actually read what I'm going to say off my little video screen here because I want to get out exactly what I wanted to say without fumbling my words. So excuse me not looking directly at the camera the whole time. Okay, so there is an ancient form of poetry utilized in Semitic, Greek, and Latin literature known as chiasmus. Some of you have probably heard of it. The poetic structure could be best described as inverted parallelism, whereby the last line mirrors the first, the second to last mirrors the second, and so on, until the central message is presented in the midline, which I just marked with an X there. The word chiasm comes from a Greek word meaning crossing. That's what it means, describing the X shape of the poetic structure. In Greek, the letter X is called, well, we write it C-H-I. I think it's pronounced chi. So we have chiasm. So in Hebrew, you say CHIASMUS. Anyway, there are many examples of this form being used in ancient scriptural texts, including, I might add, which was discovered back in the mid-60s, first by a Mormon missionary, actually. Anyway, there's examples in the Book of Mormon, which is one of the best evidences for its authenticity. Okay, because I think back in Joseph Smith's time, they weren't really aware of it. So if I just take this image here and just rub this out a little bit here, you'll see that we can use this shape also to create, if we turn these into little candles, to create a Jewish menorah. Ooh. There we go. That's my Jewish menorah with the 7 candles. Okay, so this figuratively expresses the same chiasmic idea. We might also express the same mirroring principle as the journey around the circumference of a circle. So if you can imagine, this is like our A point, our beginning, and we're like B, C, X is the midpoint, then back up, C, B, and arriving back at A. Because the two sides are a reflection of one another. So a circle, we could also say a circle was a chiasmic figure. Interestingly, space-time itself, as Einstein identified, is curved, not linear, as theorized by Newton, which adds significant weight to the scriptural statement in the Doctrine and Covenants, which is another LDS book of scripture, that the course of God is one eternal round. So we're getting the idea that this chiasmic structure is a pretty deep principle. In LDS temples, in the rooms where marriage sealings take place, we find, same idea happening, 2 facing mirrors on opposing walls with an altar. There you go, an altar placed between them and somebody standing. So if you stand by the altar and you look into either of the mirrors, you can see yourself reflecting backwards and forwards into eternity on either side. So it's the same X principle, with you being the central figure and then the reflections going back, mirroring each other on either side. Okay, so even as we barely scratch the surface of this principle, we can see that the chiasmus of the facing mirrors of eternity and of time and eternity has profound implications and application in terms of understanding some of the deep mysteries of life. Okay, so in this video, I want to briefly touch on how this chiasmic principle can be applied to the greater journey of the evolution of humanity, and how we can understand that where we're at, maybe where we're here, I've lost my space, by looking at the places where we have been. So we can understand where we are. If we just assume that this journey of time, through time and eternity, is a chiasmic experience, a circular experience, a circular journey, then one side reflecting the other, we can say, okay, well, if we're over here, then it's probably going to be a reflection of something over here that we've already been through. Interesting thought. Okay, so I actually talked about this a little bit in my book, Sophia Healing the Serpent, but just to a limited degree. So I'm just going to give a general overview here for the sake of the video about just one aspect. I want to demonstrate how understanding the chiasmic principle can provide us some context for and prompt us to be less resistant to some of the fascinating new information that has been coming to light in recent decades through the discovery of previously unknown ancient scriptural texts, which possibly fulfilling the prophecy in Ephesians chapter 1, which says that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together all things in Christ, both which are in heaven and which are in the earth, even in him. So, the closing of a circle, you imagine this is like a gathering up of all information. It's a perfect diagrammatical representation of this idea of the gathering into one of all things and of the return to Christ, the beginning and the end of all things. Okay, so I discussed in one of my previous videos called The Truth About Colour, that humans have a tendency to become quite blinkered in their world or religious views and often insist that the totality of the universal or spiritual truth, which they themselves or their chosen own group or sect has embraced, is the totality of all possible understanding. In that earlier video, I explained how we can become stranded on a single rung of the ladder towards fullness, or gnosis, which is self-realization, self with a capital S, when we remain either ignorant of or refuse to embrace more light and knowledge, or perhaps we feel unworthy of gaining more understanding, that's a common one, or believe it is beyond us to do so. Maybe we think we're not smart enough or not spiritual enough or don't have a high enough position in our church or whatever. Or when we try and smash down the knowledge and truth that has become before us in evolutionary terms or cultural terms as being ridiculous and flawed. So I did that last time. I said when we do this, we end up, here's the ladder of truth, and we end up just, stuck on this one spot, unable to ascend and knocking the legs out from under us if we're denying earlier truths, for example. Okay, so, but if we imagine that this ladder of truth is in fact circular, just turn it into a little ladder, circular ladder, we can see that the place where we started from is actually the place where we will ultimately end up again, but with gnosis. Gnosis meaning wisdom, knowledge, full understanding. So obviously when we first were here, we still had a long way to go before we had the full context and the understanding of everything, but ultimately though we arrived back in the place where we started. So that's if we get here, if we are able to move forwards with a heart and a mind which is open to receive. So you have to work out what psychological barriers you have in your own life that might prevent you from accepting more information. So what is this new or old information which has recently come to light? Well, over the past century or so, and especially in the past few decades, there has been a veritable flood of ancient texts which have been unearthed in various locations and verified as legitimate sources of spiritual and or practical writings authored thousands of years ago. Though far too numerous to mention, such texts include those discovered in the caves of Qumran, the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, the Copper Scroll, etc. There's the Nag Hammadi and Mundaic codices and manuscripts, otherwise known as the Gnostic Gospels, the mysterious and legendary Emerald Tablet, that's an interesting one, the Egyptian Dream Book, the Sumerian King List, the Hammurabi's Code of Laws, the Timbuktu manuscripts, the Dunhuang manuscripts, texts from the Vatican Library which have finally been accessed and released. The list goes on and on. That was just, a small selection of some of the things that have been found. So if the prophecies are true regarding the revealing of all things which were previously hidden or kept secret in the fullness of times, if we're told that that's going to happen, we should expect that there would be at some point a great unveiling, word apocalypse means great unveiling, or discovery of information which has been purposely hidden or kept secret for ages. So such discoveries are now occurring in our day, in recent times. This may lead us to suspect that we are in fact living in that prophesied era dubbed the fullness of times, or the end times, when all things would be openly revealed. The fact that we now live in the age of the internet also adds weight to the fulfillment of this prophecy, for not only are the ancient writings being discovered, but more importantly, the information they contain is being disseminated across the globe and is now accessible and readily available to any and all who care to read it. So it's not just that they've been found, but the fact that we can all read it if we want to. And this is where we become individually responsible. This is my main message, to learn as much as we can about what is being revealed, because while the information is available, no one is going to gather it all into a multifold collection of all truth, wrap it up and present it to us as a complete and ultimate summary of cosmic revelation. No one's going to do that for you. That is where we need to do the work, to seek and to find and to knock and to ask and to open our own minds and hearts, that we may be able to embrace the essentials within the compass of our own understanding. That is where the journey back to the source, or the true gathering, really happens. Inside each human heart, depending on how open we are. Okay, so I decided that what I'm going to do to make this journey easier for others and for my own interest is to collate and share what I've learned and am still learning, because I find it so interesting and exciting, all of it, love it, in the form of these short video presentations. So I'm going to explore different topics and themes, but my focus will be to help others discover and recover what we have collectively lost by bringing to light some of the information that is now available to us. So I really think it's worth every bit of effort that you put into finding, increasing and expanding your spiritual, just knowledge in general, but especially spiritual knowledge and understanding, in order to, because I think understanding the past and the things that have been lost from our past that have now come back again, I really believe that is because we need to embrace this stuff again to become whole, to really have the fullness. And I'm mostly going to be speaking to members of the Latter-day Saint Church because, well, not just because that's the church that I grew up in and am most familiar with, because as I said, I consider myself non-denominational everything now. And I just feel comfortable going anywhere and learning about everybody's beliefs. But I think there's some really interesting things that members of the church might discover, give some context to their own truths and the information specifically that is contained within the Mormon doctrine. So that's who I'm mostly going to be speaking to. I was going to do a little quick demo now, but I think I might leave that for the next video because this is already up near 14 minutes. So yep, look forward to some more interesting connections and revelations of past truths that help us to increase our light and understanding. That's it for today.